Well, before we get into the reading brain, we have a couple of housekeeping things we have to talk about here, Cory. So first of all, I want to just share with everybody that we completely changed the technical plumbing of the podcast. So if you had trouble getting this episode, I apologize. I've tested everything and I think it is all working. I got the feed redirected. So with multiple people, I was able to verify that in different podcast players, the new episode was showing up without having to resubscribe to the feed. But yeah, we're on Transistor now.
Nice.
And that gives us some new cool stuff. Like if you go to bookworm.fm, it'll redirect to that Transistor page. And if you click on the episodes button, you can actually search all of the episodes right there. Cory pointed out that while you could do that on the desktop website previously, it was really, really hard to find.
Yes.
on mobile. And yeah, I'm not enough of a developer to fix that sort of thing. So we moved the show over to Transistor. That gives us a much better technical foundation for the show going forward. If you go to bookworm.fm, you should be able to just see the new page, and the episode numbering works the same. So if you go to bookworm.fm/237, it'll take you directly to the page for episode 237. If it doesn't do that, then my redirects don't work, but I spent a lot of time on those, even dove into the world of regex as I showed Cory. And yeah, I think all the pipes are connected correctly, but yeah, if you have any trouble, you can actually just go back to the bookworm.fm and resubscribe to
Tiny little side
the
note.
page there.
Did you use AI to do your regex stuff?
Oh, for sure.
Yes. Okay, cool. I was like, Mike, please tell me you used some AI to do regex, because I was doing regex earlier today, actually this morning, and I was like, AI for the win. Go ahead.
Yeah, so actually I used Claude Code.
Okay.
Well, Claude, I guess I didn't actually use like the terminal or anything like that. But I said, I want to redirect this to this. And how do I do that? And then how do you do it using regex? And then it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Oh, I forgot, this piece. Eventually I got it to do exactly what I wanted it to do. And there's no way I would have figured it out on my own. AI for the win.
AI for the win.
I have one other thing I need to mention here, because this episode will go live actually right before this starts. But I am going to be doing a live Practical PKM cohort in January. It kicks off January 5th. And I am trying to make this one as accessible as humanly possible. So basically, there's two ways you can join. You can either get the Practical PKM hybrid cohort, which gives you lifetime access to all of the videos and the custom AI agent and the monthly Q&A calls. That is $497, which is still considerably less than a lot of other workshops.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also, I've decided, if you join the library, so even if you join, it's $49 a month for the pro tier. You pay quarterly, so it'd be $147. As long as you are a member of the library, you can join this live cohort for free, which means if you want to join this cohort, which I charged $800 for last time that I did it, you can pay $147 and join it live. You won't get lifetime access to everything. You'll basically have access to it for as long as you stick around. So obviously, the goal here for me is to get people who are tire kickers to give it a shot, join the cohort, which, by the way, also gets you access to Life HQ, which I sell for $197. So you won't get updates to that unless you're remaining a member, but you can get it for significantly less than I should mathematically be charging for this stuff probably. But I just want to get a bunch of people in this cohort. It's been a while since I did this one live. I've got a few ideas for how I want to change this based on when I went through the Rite of Passage cohort with David Perel. And I think this is going to be the best one. It's also the most affordable one. So basically, you can get access to the live one for $147. But if you go to join.practicalpkm.com, that's the website for the hybrid cohort. And if you buy either of those options, you will get access to this cohort as well when it's ready.
Nice. Awesome.
Indeed. So now let's talk about action items. Did you talk to Katie about craft and commerce?
I didn't.
Come
Mike.
on!
I want everybody in the audience to know that if Mike could punch me through the internet, he might punch me right now, because like he wants me to do this so bad, and I am not intentionally not doing it. I just don't remember. Like my memory is so bad when it comes to certain things, and I just didn't remember. But hold on one second. I am going to. I feel like I wrote this down last time and then didn't
You
do it.
did. So that's the only reason I left it on here, by the way. I'm not trying to shame you into going.
Oh no.
You literally last time, though, because I reviewed the episode and published it right before we recorded this one. Like you said, I'm going to put this in my reminders and I'm going to talk to Katie. So follow up with me on this one. So that's the only reason I am. It's okay. I will have my spectacular moment of follow-up failure momentarily.
All right. So I put it in my thing again. And we'll see if this actually works. I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but you know, at some point we're gonna work. By the way, I'm playing around with Apple Reminders, and we're seeing how that works. Okay,
nice.
So my next
Apple
one,
Reminders, Apple Podcasts, just use all the Apple apps.
I know. It's kind of hard to not because they're built into everything, which that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, Apple Podcasts is very good, by the way. And if you want to hear me talk about my experiment with it, that's in the pro show.
That is in the pro show. Okay, so I was supposed to create a storyboard for the last book, which I did. I'm really happy with that. It was good. I liked it. I like doing that. Now, here's what I'll tell you immediately. I did not create one for this book. That this will you'll understand why as we talk about this book, but I did not create one for this book. And this is an interesting part of our conversation because I was like gung-ho. This was like a cool new way to think about these things. And I actively chose not to do that for this book. Like 100% actively chose not to do that. So I did not do it for this book, but I did it for the last book. Cool. And then create one for the Institute. I haven't done that yet, but that's a plan for over the break. So when I say break, so I'm a faculty member. And that means we just took finals. I'm in the process of finishing my grading. And then I have like a couple weeks off before the spring semester starts. So I'm prepping for next classes, but I have a little more time to do some thinking around different things. The Institute is a like mini seminary thing that I'm doing. So I'm trying to make connections throughout the Bible and throughout scripture and theology and those type of things. So I'm planning to do that one. I just didn't have time because of finals, but that's still on the list. Right. I guess I had one more. Develop my enduring questions. Nope. Didn't even think about that one. Never even crossed the brain. So that one's out.
All right.
How about you?
Well, mixed bag here. So check out Sublime as my idea integration board. I don't like the term idea integration board still, but Sublime is definitely the thing I want to use for mixing ideas, shall we say.
Okay.
And I went all in with Sublime. I bought the lifetime deal.
Nice.
Yep. So they're shipping me one of those deadline candles where it actually says deadline on it, and the goal is to like write your book before you get down to the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just the whole ethos of this company. They have these zines that they publish periodically, and the latest one was all about human creativity and AI. And they pull in interviews with like Kevin Kelly and those types of people who are really thinking about this stuff in good ways. You know, good is subjective, I guess, but people who I think are really thinking about this stuff the right way. And I think this is gonna go places. Maybe not. You know, maybe I lose momentum and I walk away from it. I did the same sort of thing with Rome back in the day. I paid the 5-year thing, and then I was like, these people creep me out. I'm not gonna do this anymore.
Well, that was my question. Is do you know anything about the people who make Sublime? Like, I mean, do they have a history? Do you know anything? Or I wouldn't have looked into it. I'm just asking if you did.
No. I guess no news is good news on that front.
Yeah.
With Rome, I kind of had an idea, but I'm like, it can't be that bad. It was that bad.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's subjective. I mean, some people still use Rome. I think actually Anne Lore uses it. The tool is actually pretty cool, but yeah, Connor would say stuff, and the insider calls, they called them like cult gatherings and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah,
it just wasn't for me.
Got it.
So yeah, that one is good, and that is kind of what instigated the Apple Podcast experiment that we talked about in the pro show. Mm-hmm. The next follow-up item that I had here was to create the queries for the light bulb, the key, etc. I didn't do this yet. I intended to, but it just fell through the cracks for me. Same with check out the workshop. I actually went in there and poked around a little bit. I do have access to that circle group. and did not have time to watch any of the videos. Uh, I mean, just I don't like to make excuses. These last 2 weeks though, Adelaide got pneumonia. Malachi broke his foot.
Oh my
In
gosh.
addition to all the other like end of the semester stuff, it's enough. Just let it be over.
See, Mike. So here's the difference between you and I. Mike doesn't like to make excuses. I don't think that's an excuse. I think that's an explanation. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like I think that's an explanation.
Sure.
And I will gladly make an explanation. What happened to me this week? Finals. Done. like done. It's an explanation of why things didn't get done. Finals. So.
Yeah, so I still intend to do those. Those aren't, ones that I'm going to walk away from. The create queries, that's actually something I think will be useful, and I want to add that actually probably to Life HQ at some point. And then the workshop, I want to go through it because I want to know what is in there so I can reach out to Jolt and see if he would be willing to do a presentation for the library. But yeah, haven't had time to do that.
Well, there's always
so 1 out of 3, I guess.
Hey, always put off today what can be done tomorrow. Isn't that the saying? Isn't that the way it goes?
Procrastinate on purpose? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, man.
Okay, let's talk about the reading brain. Today's book is Proust and the Squid, which I have to apologize because for years I've been calling this The Proust and the Squid. It is actually Proust and the Squid. Proust as in Marcel Proust.
Mm-hmm.
And this is by Maryanne Wolf. I had read a book previously by her called Reader Come Home, which is kind of the reason that I picked this one for Cory, because in that book, she kind of talks about how information hits different from an analog book versus a digital screen, and didn't really get there in this one. This was a deep dive into the science of reading, which when I was going through this, I was like, this is fascinating, and I wonder what Cory's going to think about this, because in my mind, there are 2 extreme options available. One is I'm a university professor. This is totally my jam. Everyone in my class needs to know this stuff. The other one is I do not care.
For those of you who can't see my head shaking because you're listening to the audio version of this, when he said, this is great, I'm a university professor, blah, blah, blah. No, I was shaking my head hard no. Like absolute hard no. Now, I respect her. Like she knows her stuff. I mean, she's doing it. Like this is where the world she lives in. She loves this. I am really glad. Like I'm really, really glad for her. But the neuroscience of reading and like where reading developed from and all of those things, Mike, I could have cared less about 90% of this book. I mean, there's maybe 10% of this book that I'm like, yeah, like, okay, this was good. But 90% of this book could have cared less. I would go as far as to say, because I think this is a good example for our listeners. I would not have read this book. I would have stopped reading this book had you. And don't read that as like it's a poor quality book. I just have zero interest in the subject matter. And don't again, I don't want you to be offended by that either. It's like, so hopefully you're not offended by that.
I'm not offended.
Okay,
no.
Good. Because it's like, you had no idea. I had no idea. I got like a chapter and a half.
I had a little bit of an idea. I knew it was going to be science-based. I knew she was going to talk about like the neuroplasticity and stuff like that. I guess I didn't know quite how deep she would go though. So
yeah. I mean, we're talking, Sumerians, and we're talking the Egyptians, and we're talking about looking at images versus processing.
I know
times.
It's incredible, isn't it?
No, sure, yeah, it is incredible. But I think it just went too far into my interest level when it comes to reading. I actually do think, though, based on hearing your description, Reader Come Home, I think is a much more interesting book to me than
Probably.
this one is, because that one would challenge me more. This one was more of an information thing. The other one I'll bring up, and hopefully I'm not putting the cart before the horse for you, Mike, but the other one that's big in this one is dyslexia. So if you are dyslexic or you're interested in dyslexia and the science behind that and kind of the application of that, this is a really cool book for folks who either have dyslexia or teach folks with dyslexia. So that would be another really good engagement point for those of you who are in that world and care about that world. I'll say that too.
All right. Well, this is going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it will be.
um, okay, so a little bit of background on Maryanne Wolf. She's a professor, was at a university on the East Coast, now works at UCLA, I believe.
Okay, so I think she was at MIT then, because MIT is ringing in my brain that she had a colleague at MIT. I remember her saying that in the book somewhere.
Yeah, she said the name of the university. I didn't jot it down because honestly, it just wasn't important. She doesn't work there anymore. But we've talked to her for the Focus podcast.
Oh.
She's one of the kindest, smartest people you will ever meet. And
What was the what was the context of the Focus podcast? Like what did you bring her on for?
David and I both read Reader Come Home, and we're like, we gotta
Oh, you just wanted to talk to her
talk to her.
about Reader Come Home? Very
Yeah,
cool. Very
because
cool.
I mean, one of the themes of Focused is analog, obviously,
Hmm.
and so I've been trying to get David to read analog books for a long time. I mentioned this book. He read it. He's like, this is amazing. I'm totally in. We got to talk to this lady. And he reached out to her and she came on the show and it was amazing.
That's awesome.
It's one of my, my favorite episodes. Honestly,
That's my action item from this book. Just so you know, I'm going to go listen to your Focus
listen to
podcast.
that
Yeah, because
episode.
I
Okay.
didn't catch that episode, so I'm going to go listen to the episode with her because that sounds great.
Yeah, it was really cool. And, we recorded initially on video. I remember it was about -30 that day in Wisconsin. So my internet was flaking out. Maybe that's not why the internet was flaking out, but I was the only one home. There was no one else using it,
Yeah.
right? Fairly extreme weather conditions, and we had to turn off the video at one point. But prior to that, she's taking her laptop around and showing us, look at this stack of books over here in the kitchen, and look at this stack of books over here in the den. You know, it was amazing.
She is your spirit animal, that's for sure.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And yeah, so where was I going with that? I like the approach that she takes with this. I think actually like her writing style, this is getting style and rating, I guess, but it's very narrative based.
Hmm.
So if you just are interested in the topic at all, I feel like you could just sit down with this book. She's going to share a whole bunch of stories. She's done a whole bunch of research, and it's going to be told in a very compelling fashion.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting to me. You know, you mentioned I totally get this. Where if you're just not interested in the science of reading at all, then yeah, you're
Hmm.
not gonna like this. And I guess that's the thing is like if you find something that piques your interest, this is the exact type of book that I would want to read to get into that stuff. And I am fascinated by this stuff. I've been fascinated with the what's the term study of the brain.
Yeah, like neuroscience.
You know how
Yeah,
neuroscience.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
how like the amygdala is the emotional center and it hijacks the rational thinking process and all those different pieces that connect. I love that kind of stuff. And I will even admit that she talks about it so much that it was a little bit hard for even me to follow along with it. But I think it's really cool to understand how all the wires are connected. And then as she goes through the book, there's 3 different parts: how the brain learned to read, how the brain learns to read over time, so kind of history and present, and then when the brain can't learn to read. I feel like this is kind of the future-based part where even if you're not dealing with dyslexia specifically, it's sort of like, well, everybody's different and here are some of the issues. So how do you use all this historical context and these things that we've talked about previously with these challenges that you may be facing right now in order to become the best version of yourself, for lack of a better term? Keep learning, you know, keep going, keep growing, that sort of thing. And it's not prescriptive. It's not a systems book. It is definitely an information dump, but I loved
Yes.
every second of it.
Well, and what I'll tell you is, I mean, I've read a lot of academic writing, like a lot of academic writing. This is a really good example of taking heavy academic ideas and things that like are made up in, you know, hundreds of academic journals and papers and were presented at conferences and things, and making it accessible to a whole nother set of people. So it's like from that standpoint, like she's very, very skilled at taking complicated ideas and translating them into something that like everybody, you know, like, cause I know nothing about neuroscience really. I know even less about the neuroscience of reading. Like when you write the word amygdala into a book, I stop caring for the most part, right? Like, I mean, it's like, whatever, like you're going to start talking about the amygdala. I don't really care about the amygdala. But what I'll tell you is like, this was very, very well done. I'm going to say translated, like it's very well translated from academic speak to normal normal person speak. So that was really cool to see, and it was a good example for me if I ever think about taking like really heavy academic things and trying to turn them into a more popular text.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, really, the neuroscience, like I guess I can get why that isn't a thing, but essentially it's how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Let's get into it. So
Let's do
part
it.
1 is how the brain learned to read, and there's 3 chapters in this part. I think we'll actually tackle each chapter because she's got very specific ideas that she's presenting in each of the chapters. So chapter 1, reading lessons from Proust and the Squid. Chapter 2, how the brain adapted itself to read. And then chapter 3, the birth of an alphabet and Socrates' protests. Those are all in this first section. So let's start with chapter 1, reading lessons from Proust and the Squid. Now, as mentioned earlier, Proust refers to Marcel Proust, who once described a reading sanctuary. That sounded amazing. And then the squid is an analogy to understand how neurons fire and transmit to each other. And kind of the idea here is, how squid learn to swim. And I think that's interesting. I like the pyramid of reading that she describes here, where there's like the different levels. There's the surface behavior, there's the cognitive level, the neurological structures, the neurons, and then the genes at the very bottom. I'm not sure I care to go all the way down there, because I feel like the further down you go, the more maybe understanding you have of why something is, but the less practical stuff becomes.
Yeah.
There's an 80-20 with this for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
But the major point she makes, which is fascinating to me, is that reading is a great example of the brain's plasticity and ability to learn a new skill, because we were never born to read.
Huge point that we weren't born to read. It's like, I was like, oh shoot, we weren't born to read. Like, that makes total sense.
Yep. And the other thing I really like in here is the 3 principles to help the brain learn to read, which is the capacity to make new connections from older structures, the capacity to form areas of exquisitely precise specialization for recognizing patterns in information, and the ability to learn to recruit and connect information from these areas automatically. There's some cool quotes in this section. One in particular I jotted down, which really has nothing to do with the topic of the book, but Edward Tenner says, "It would be a shame if brilliant technology were to end up threatening the kind of intellect that produced it." And I feel like that's exactly where we're at with the AI right now. Although I don't think it's really the existential threat that some other people think, but, whatever.
Mm-hmm. I think you talked about those 3 principles. I think one of the cool things to do would be take those 3 principles and apply them to our world today. So the capacity to make connections among older structures. Okay, so how do we take traditional learning and traditional reading and apply that into our world today? Like, how do we make those connections between those? The capacity to form areas of exquisitely precise specialization for recognizing patterns of information. So that's changing right now. Like, there are people who are better at that in the short form media, and there are people who are better at that than the long form media. And I'm by no means saying I'm going for the short form media stuff. I'm just saying that we have to look at this and go, this can be applied to what exists today as well, and we need to pay attention to that. And then the ability to learn to recruit and connect information from these areas automatically. And this is the one that is like, oh man, this automatic connection is strange to me, and I don't know what to do or unpack that one. The big quote that stood out for me in this one would be Joseph Epstein's, "A biography of any literary person ought to deal at length with what he read and when, for in some sense we are what we read." And I completely 100% agree with this. I think we are what we read. I think we are what we expose ourselves to. There's this idea of good in, good out, garbage in, garbage out. And I think this is a real thing that we need to be paying more attention to in society, that like, a lot of our young people, forgive me, like, for making this generalized statement. I don't like to do this, but at the same time, a lot of our young people are putting a lot of garbage in all the time, and it's over and over and over again. And they get frustrated when we ask them to put, some would say it's different garbage, right? And others would say it's actually good stuff. So like, you can debate that all day long, but like, these ideas that are time tested and true, that have made it into a book that people will say, like, we've been reading this for hundreds of years, we should continue to read this for hundreds of years. like that is in my mind the stuff that's held the test of time. That's the good stuff, and we need to be putting more good stuff into people. And this is where I'm like a big fan of like liberal arts education, because it helps us put that good stuff into our brains and expose ourselves to those good ideas. So I do get an action item out of here. And I don't remember where it was in the book, and I'm almost positive it was in this first chapter. So forgive me if it wasn't. She references a book called, I'm almost positive. Maybe I might be getting it mixed up with something I saw online, but there's a book called Bandersnatch. And it's a book about like, Narnia and Tolkien and those type of things. And I want to read that book, and it tied in like it. I don't know if it came out of this book or not, but it mind melded between this book and what I was looking at online, because she talks about in one here Middle Earth and Narnia and those type of things in chapter 1. So that's really what I got out of this first one, other than she tells you what the goal of the book is and kind of what she's trying to do. And this is part of why I lost it, is she told me what the goal of the book was, and I was like, oh, I don't really care about the goal of the book. So that's kind of where I lost it, but we're gonna do well. This is gonna be good. So I'm ready to move to 2.
All right. Okay, so chapter 2, how the brain adapted itself to read. This is really where she introduces 3 big epiphanies. The first one is a new form of symbolic representation. The second one is a system of symbols that can be used to communicate across time and space. And the third one is sound symbol correspondence, representing the realization that all words are composed of tiny individual sounds and that symbols can physically signify each of these sounds in every word. That's the gist of it. And then she gets into the history, which I didn't jot down all of the statistics and all that kind of stuff, but it was fascinating. So you mentioned the Sumerians. The first written languages she mentions came from the Sumerian cuneiform, but also mentions later that there was another first in the Egyptian hieroglyphics, but they weren't connected. They kind of evolved separately in their own parts of the world, which is kind of interesting because it wasn't like something that built on something else. These were 2 totally separate what's the term I'm looking for when you have a study and you have people in the different groups,
like experiments,
focus groups.
Yeah.
So there was no cross pollination here, and they still ended up in the same place, which is interesting. But a couple of things that just minor things that kind of were interesting to me. One was that their first encyclopedia was named All Things Known About the Universe. What a great name.
It's a great name. That actually would be a great podcast name. All Things Known About the Universe.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have trouble using that title, but it reminded me of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And then the other one was that, going back to the first languages being Sumerian cuneiform, that Sumerian women had their own dialect called Emisal, which was translated fine tongue. So, yeah. Not anything that you're going to do specifically with this stuff. It's just interesting anecdotes there. But I think it is helpful to understand how we got here. And then the other thing here, kind of going back to the point about the Sumerians and the Egyptians and these processes happening at the same time but at different places, she actually said that evidence suggests that writing was invented, quote unquote, at least 3 times in the last part of the 4th millennium BC, which is awesome, I think.
Yeah.
Well, so if you're gonna extrapolate that, the brain is never meant to read. Why did we learn to read? It's to make us bigger, better, faster, stronger. I don't know. Like, it's a superpower if you think about it.
Yeah, this is one of the coolest points of the first part of her book, is the idea of like, we weren't meant to do this. If you look at it biologically, we weren't meant to do this. Yet, what I've just told you is in 3 different places or in 4 different times or whatever it is, humans did it. Like they did that. Like there was something in there, something that drove this. Now I have my reasons why I think that's true, right? Like I have my like internal explanations for this, but just pondering on that idea of like, oh, physically is the wrong word. Like brain wise, body wise, right? Like this isn't something we're much better off drawing pictures and just talking to each other. Like that, like why would we need to actually make this word code system that has syllables and letters and all this stuff? Like that just doesn't make any sense. It seems like it makes everything harder. And what's cool is she's going to tie this in at the very end about why this mattered and how it helped us, right? Well, I guess she's going to tie it in a couple different times, but I remember it at the very end. So I think that's really, really neat. I like her idea here of mental representations of information being representations, which I've heard this before, that like a representation is a representation. And I really like the idea of that, because what are we doing when we do writing? And then we're taking this idea, or well, I guess visuals too. When we take visuals, we're taking an idea and we're representing it as a visual. When we write, we're taking an idea and we're representing it as words and sentences and paragraphs. And then we can adjust the way we represent that. And you see this in terms of the way people do it. Like some people write a paragraph and you're like, man, I know exactly what you're talking about. That makes total sense. And some people write the exact or about the exact same topic, but they write a different paragraph and you're like, no idea. Like what words did you just say? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And it's a really cool thing this is why I think you have said this before to me, and I've heard you say this to other people as well. There is space for you to do the thing. So if you're passionate about something and you want to tell that story, you want to communicate that idea, you want to teach that thing, there's space for you to do that, because you may represent that in a way that connects with a group of people that it is never connected with before. Like they've been trying to do this their whole life and they've just never got it. And I think that's a really cool thing. I actually think it's a really cool feature of AI is it gives us the ability for something to represent something in a bunch of different ways, and the human doesn't get tired because the system just does it. Now, it may do it wrong, so that's a problem, but so may humans. So there you go. But like I do think this is a really cool chapter, and the flow as it goes down is really cool to think about. We weren't supposed to do this, but we've done it a bunch of times, which is kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, so let's go to the next chapter, because you were kind of hitting on why would we want to create an alphabet? And there's a cool story in chapter 3 about that. Chapter 3 is the birth of an alphabet and Socrates' protests, and mentions a story by Thomas Mann, who said that he refers to the event of Moses going up the mountain to get the 10 Commandments from God as kind of the birthplace of an alphabet, which is interesting to think about it that way, because the point he makes is that in response to God asking Moses to carve the 10 Commandments on 2 stone tablets in a way that everyone could understand them, Moses had to create an alphabetic language.
Yep.
And I never thought about that before, but it makes sense. If you want to communicate something to somebody else in a specific way, you have to have a baseline understanding of these are the boundaries within which we're playing, I guess. And it makes sense as she's going through this that an alphabet would do that, because an alphabet basically takes all of the possible options and shrinks it down into these
26
tiny elements that you can put together, a lot like the atomic ideas that we were talking about in the last book. There's the criteria of an alphabet from Eric Havelock, which I liked here. There's 3 criteria. The first is a limited number of letters or characters. The second is a comprehensive set of characters capable of conveying the minimal sound units of the language. And then the third is a complete correspondence between each phoneme, I don't know how to say that, in language, and each visual sign or letter. So if you have those 3 things, you have the foundations of an alphabet. And the 26 letters that are in the English alphabet, she mentions that's kind of the sweet spot, but they don't have to have exactly 26. Basically, if you have thousands and thousands, you may as well not even have an alphabet. In which case, that activates a totally different part of your brain if you're learning to read Chinese characters, although there is a foundational part of the Chinese language. I forget the name of it, starts with a P, that is sort of like a alphabet for those characters that when kids are in school, they learn that first.
Oh, yeah.
The big thing I want to talk about here, but I'll let you kind of share whatever you want to first, is the Socrates objections to the written language.
Okay, so pause that for a second. Um,
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tangent.
yeah,
So
so for everybody, I mean, I teach at Colorado Christian University, so therefore, you made the connection to Moses and the tablets, and this is a really interesting thing if you think about it contextually. So earlier in the Bible, right, and whether you believe in the Bible or not, that's not the point of this. But like for somebody who reads the Bible and does, earlier in the Bible there was the Tower of Babel, and the people tried to create the technology, and the technology was created in essence to be like God. Like that was the reason why they did it. So God said, okay, no, we're going to split you up and we're going to give you all a bunch of different languages, and that was where like the Tower of Babel came from. So the idea that we then tie back into, oh, and then Moses from God creates the alphabet, which is like the one universal thing to like tell everybody what I want to tell them. It's just really cool. Like I'm going to say that again, I don't care about the neuroscience of this book. It's just a really cool idea that is a really cool thought experiment to go, wow, I had never thought about like they got scattered and they're all speaking different languages. And then he's saying, God's saying, Moses, write this one thing down, and it's what everybody's going to look at. Like, it's a really cool idea. Before we get to
yeah,
Socrates, another one I want to say is she makes 3 claims about the unique contributions of the alphabet. The alphabet's increased efficiency over other systems, the alphabet's facilitation of novel thoughts never before articulated, and then the novice reader's ease in acquiring an alphabetic system through their awareness of the sounds of speech. And it's like, I like those 3 ideas when they tie into the 3 that you talked about, right? Like in terms of what makes up an alphabet. And you say like, okay, does it increase my efficiency in doing things? She's going to drive that home later in the book, that it does increase our efficiency at kind of gaining information and communicating information. The alphabet's facilitation of novel thoughts. Writing is thinking. Right. And we've talked about this before. Like when we write something down, it changes the way we think about it, whether we like it or not. So writing is thinking. And then you get in this idea that the novice reader's ease of acquiring the system. And really, I mean, we're teaching our kids to read right now. Like, and we've done it. We're on number 4. And it's crazy. Like, wow, it's complicated. And you have to teach them the difference between there and why they're spelled different and why they mean different things. When you think about it, it's actually not that hard, right? Like it really isn't that complicated. And then some of you who speak more of a Latin-based language, I think it's even easier in that, right? Like, so the ones where the root meanings actually stay consistent and then you change the ends and things like that. I think English actually makes it more complicated. What is it, Mike? I think German makes it even more complicated. Like, the Germanic languages do like just crazy
I don't
stuff.
know.
And I think she calls this out here as that Finnish is like the craziest one. It just does absolutely wonky things. At this point, let's talk about Socrates.
Well, the other thing I want to mention with what you just shared there, so our youngest Adelaide is learning to read, and we've learned from previous experience because she's our 5th. Some of our kids like picked it up really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them took a while. They all got it. They all read great, so never really worried about it. But last night, after reading this book, I'm sitting there on the living room floor reading with Adelaide, and like, well, let's read this book together. You do the voice for this character, I'll do the voice for this other character. And seeing her sound out the words and actually read, I had this context of all this stuff that was going on in her tiny little brain, and I was like, this is amazing.
I agree with you there, right? Like, because I've thought about my children as I've read this book and like the way they learn to read and things they mess up and things they get right and all that. It is amazing. Like, I agree with you there.
Yeah. Okay, so Socrates. Socrates was against the spread of written language. And why was he against the spread of written language? Well, there were 3 specific objections, but really it ties back to the fact that ancient Greeks had amazing ability to recall information. And so personally, I just think he was really good at something, and something came along that made that thing not as important, and he was not happy about it.
Yep.
But the 3 objections were the inflexibility of the written word, the destruction of memory, and the loss of control over a language. I think there's actually a little bit of validity to some of this stuff, specifically the destruction of memory, because when you have to memorize all these things, you are able to do it. Your brain adapts to absorb information a certain way and recall it a certain way. When you can just write it down and you have a record and you can go look it up, it's different. and that is exponentially more the case in our digital world today, where lots of people don't know things because they can go look them up, and that's contributed to the fact that we can only remember 6 characters of a phone number instead of the whole thing and stuff like that. So I do think there's something to this, but it's definitely a bit of an old man yells at cloud. And it's interesting because Socrates was against it. His mentee, Plato, was kind of ambivalent. He's like, I could take it or leave it, whatever. I see both sides. His mentee, Aristotle, loved to read. So Socrates was never going to win this fight.
Yep.
I'm not sure why he would pick this hill to die on, but he did.
Yeah, the hardest one I have for him is, she says later here that, his concerns are disarming, but they're really not. It's the third one that he calls out, is this: he passionately advocated the unique role that oral language plays in the development of morality and virtue. And I like that one just doesn't, I don't understand why oral language and speech plays so much more in morality and virtue in his mind. Like, I would love to, if I cared more, I would love to understand that more. Because I don't see the difference there. But I think it's interesting how against it was. And I agree with you that I think a big part of this was, I mean, we're speculating on somebody that's, thousands of years old at this point, but, existed. I think there's a lot of I'm really steeped in this culture of the oral tradition, and we debate and we discuss and we do all this stuff. And then you're bringing this new technology in, and we see this all the time. Oh, this new technology is going to change everything. I don't want it to do that. Right? Like, it's going to mess with my oral tradition. It's going to mess with our debates. It's going to mess with what we're going to do. And instead of us going to a room and dialoguing and having that debate, we're now going to go and sit in the library and read books, and we're not going to dialogue anymore. And that just blew his mind in terms of that. So
that was the same argument that the clergy had with the printing press too. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, we have the Bible in Latin. We're the only ones who understand it. We're the experts. Now everybody's got it. Everybody's an expert. This isn't good.
Yeah. I think one of the areas where, I don't know if he articulated it this well, but it comes into my mind, is the idea of, I do think we as a society don't memorize enough.
Yeah.
We don't try to put enough into our brains and keep it there, whereas the oral tradition would require you to do that. Oh, if I want to go talk elegantly about this, I have to know the stuff. And I mean, I fall victim to this all the time. Well, I don't need to know it. It's in my Obsidian vault. Like, I don't need to know it. I can go look it up. I can Google it. I can ask AI. I can do whatever it is. That does us a disservice. I think that if we were able to know more and have it memorized, I think that would be better for us.
100% agree. All right. Ready to go to the next section?
Part 2.
All right. So part 2 is how the brain learns to read over time. And the first chapter here, chapter 4, the beginnings of reading development or not. The reason for the or not is that there is a huge gap between kids who come from homes where they are encouraged to read and kids who come from homes where they are not encouraged to read. The gap, she said at one point, is something like 32 million words by the time the kids are in kindergarten, which is that's a lot. And this chapter kind of explains why that's a big deal. A lot of science in this one. Just a couple of things, I guess, to kind of pick out here. Reading to your child at an early age makes the connection between reading stories and feeling love. So if you want to instill love for reading, do it early. Around 18 months, there's a major breakthrough, and that's when children learn that everything has a name. Never really thought about that before. That was kind of interesting. Learning about the feelings of others is not simple, even for a lot of adults, but reading stories actually is a big boost to that.
Mm-hmm.
And the ability to learn is tied to the brain's ability to produce myelin. Now, are you familiar with myelin? Have you heard that before? Okay. So I first came across this concept when I read Deep Work by Cal Newport, because he talked about how when you're doing deep focused work, your brain produces more of the myelin, which is what helps the neurons fire faster and cleaner. So that's the process that's going on in the brain that helps you learn. So more myelin is is good. Now, your brain may not produce it as well as other brains, and like you really can't do anything with that. But well, I guess, not till you get to part 3 of the book anyways. But the big thing here for me is that the areas of the brain associated with the integration of visual, verbal, and auditory information, and that part of the brain is called the angular gyrus. That doesn't get sufficiently myelinated until between 5 and 7 years old. So before 5 and 7, all of the stuff that happens in the brain, which allows you to read, because it is a combination of all of those different skills, the visual, the verbal, and the auditory, all of that has to come together in order for you to learn how to read. And that happens somewhere between 5 and 7 years old. So if your kid's not reading in kindergarten, don't freak out about
it. Yeah, exactly. This is one of those places where when she gets into phonological development, semantic development, syntactic development, morphological development, these are interesting to me, but this is where she went into like academic mode a little bit too strong for me, and I just wasn't that interested. So I kind of I guess there was another one, pragmatic development. But like these are interesting to me to reflect on my children and what they're getting out of the fact that we are reading to them and those kind of things. But my bigger interest in this chapter was the overall idea of, I've always heard that it's good to read to your kids. I've always heard that you should read to your kids, right? And there's a bunch of different reasons why you should do that. This gave it like the boost. It was like, ugh, like here's why you should read to your, and it's like she's built the trust with me that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna actually pay attention to what she's saying here, and I'm gonna actually care about why I should read to my kids. So like that was good for me. It also made me like sad, when I think about this chapter, and then I think about the kids who grew up and they don't have books, and the kids who grew up and they're not read to, and she makes a statement here: when words are not heard, concepts are not learned. When syntactic forms are never encountered, there is less knowledge about the relationship of the events of a story. And like this is just on the sheer, you talked about the 32 million words or whatever it is, right? Like, so there's that idea in itself, but then there's also the creativity side of it. Like I think about like, we read to our kids, and then they come back and they're acting like the knight, or they're acting like the monster, or they're doing whatever. And there's this whole creativity side of it that exposure gives them. And if you're not read to, like, I think, how do I say this? It forces you to make a mind picture. Like, and I don't care whether you're 3 years old or whether you're 37 or whether you're 104. It forces you to make a mind picture of what's happening in the book. And if you're not forced to make that mind picture, you don't make the mind picture. So like, I think it just made me a little bit sad when I'm reading this and thinking to myself, man, like there's a whole group of young people out there by no fault of their own. They're not exposed to books. They're not read to. They just don't have this development that I think is critical. And I think we see the latent effects of this as they grow up. So she did a really good job convincing me of the need for this, even though I was a captive audience at the start of it. So I thought chapter 4 hit hard.
Yeah, and just to extend that a little bit, if you were from a disadvantaged position, you can be upset about that and say that's not fair, or you can take control of your situation where you're at. I mean, yeah, this does paint a picture of this gap that exists at the beginning, but she ends the book when she talks about dyslexia with some of the most successful people in the world who weren't able to read until much later. So just because you had a bad start doesn't mean that you have to finish poorly. So if you feel like you're in that position, it's not all doom and gloom. You have more agency there maybe than you realize. But as a parent, yeah, you want to set your kids up for success and do whatever you can for them. And she makes a really compelling case that one of the best things you can do for your kids is to read to them.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So the next chapter is chapter 5, The Natural History of Reading Development. And this one talks about the different types of readers. There are 5: emerging pre-readers, novice readers, decoding readers, fluent comprehending readers, and expert readers. She talks about the first couple in this chapter, and then the next chapter talks about the others. And I don't know that I really want to go into all of the different characteristics of these different classifications of readers, but a couple of interesting points here. Fluency is being able to utilize all the special knowledge a child has about a word, its letters, letter patterns, meanings, grammatical functions, roots, and endings fast enough to have time to think and comprehend. That is a great definition of the word fluency, although she says in the book, I think, that there's no like standard agreed upon definition. She shares a couple different ones. This is the one I jotted down though, because I think this is really good. The goal of learning to read is to understand what message the author is communicating and then have the time to think about it, understand what they're saying, and then respond to it. So this is like a bookend book, in my opinion, to what's the name of it? How to Read a Book. Mortimer Adler.
Okay.
I blanked for a second.
Okay.
Mortimer Adler. I hated that book when I read it. I was Cory Hickson reading Proust and the Squid when I read How to Read a Book. And I was like, I never want to pick this up again. It is so boring. It's 300 pages. I already know how to read a book. Leave me alone, old man. And as I went on from that book years later, I was like, that was actually really profound. Those 4 levels of reading that he talked about, that made a lot of sense. And the more I read, the more I understood the importance of being able to work a book like that. And that has definitely influenced how much I've been able to get out of the books that I read from that point on. Now, I don't think Proust and the Squid is going to have that same level of effect, but you can see that it is laying the foundation for, like, if How to Read a Book is the tactical, this is how you argue with the author and make it your own. Proust and the Squid is the science behind why that works. So I guess having read How to Read a Book, that gave me context for what was actually happening. And then in this section specifically, she's talking about the science behind it. Oh, I get it now. Yeah. Like another thing she talked about here, which I thought was fascinating, and I totally thought of you when I read this, is comprehension monitoring. I would wager to guess that there are a few students where if you could open up their brains and download some knowledge into them matrix style, you would inject into them comprehension monitoring, which is knowing when you need to reread a text in order to comprehend it, because then you will do well on the test.
Yep. This is one of the things that it actually made me think about the way I read is it's not just words flying past. It's, do I actually understand this? Do I actually understand this? And what I'll tell you is I was not effective at standardized testing when I was coming up through young grades in middle school and high school, because I was not good at this. Like, I could read a passage, but I couldn't retain it and apply it then, like, and comprehend it in a way. Like, I had to go back and reread it. So I now know that it's like I needed to know the question. That way I was actively reading, because I'm not the most active reader in the world. So like, but I had no idea of that when I was young. I just knew that, like, I don't like the English part of this. Like, the English part of the exam is terrible, and I wish I didn't have to take it. I'm more of a math guy, right? Like, that was the way I had always lumped it in. But it was really that idea of, I didn't have that comprehension idea of, am I actually picking up on this? And I wish I knew then what I knew now, kind of a thing, because I would change that. I would actually do some things differently. Other than that, I didn't really get a ton of stuff out of this chapter. So, it was fine, but nothing really much came out of this one for me.
All right. Let's go on to the next one then. So chapter 6 is the unending story of reading's development. And this talks about the timeline of reading. That has the different milliseconds on the timeline and the different brain modes. That's interesting, but I don't know that there's a whole lot I do with that prior to the next section, I guess. But the 3 major jobs of the reading brain, I feel like, are fairly important, and that is recognizing patterns, planning, strategy, and feeling. So this is interesting because you don't really think of, when I am reading a book like Proust and the Squid, this is helping me develop the ability to plan strategy and feel more deeply.
Yep.
Yeah. And I guess, the takeaway from this is, if you really want to do the most with what you've got to work with, reading's got to be a part of the equation. It's easy to see, for me anyways, understanding this, why that old adage, readers are leaders. Or I came across a statistic, which is actually the genesis of the Bookworm podcast, that the most successful CEOs, one of the common traits they had was that they read 24 books a year. So basically 2 books a month. And do the math. Well, if we read a book every 2 weeks, that's roughly 2 a month.
Yep.
So you want to show up on a podcast and talk to me about this?
Yeah. Well,
it's an accountability mechanism.
Well, that's great. That's great. I mean, and I think that's part of the reason why I do this. You think about those recognizing patterns, planning strategy, and feeling. If I think about the books that we read on here, and the reason why I listened to Bookworm before I became, a co-host on the show, is because I was trying to figure out what are the patterns across people that I don't know if I respected is too strong of a word, but that had done good things before me. Okay, so you've done these good things before me. Like, are there patterns I can pick up across these books? Then I'm thinking about, what am I going to do in the future? That's your planning strategy part. And then we read whole books that are really about, like, go get them, attaboy, like, climb the mountain kind of a thing. So it's like these 3 things connect directly to what we do and how we try to apply these things to our life. So I'm good on that. She makes a statement in here that I think changes. It's like the core component of the book. Like, and I know she probably wouldn't say that, but for me, it's the core component of the book. The fluent, comprehending reader's brain is on the threshold of attaining the single most essential gift of the evolved reading brain, time. And I think about that and I go, what on earth does that mean? And then she unpacks it as we go through this, that like you're trying to read quickly. So that's your fluent comprehending. Read quickly with understanding, so you have the time, milliseconds. It's not a minute, it's not 100 years, it's not anything like. It's milliseconds to then apply that and recognize a pattern and do. And this is a really interesting idea to me. Like, why do we read? Why do we want to be a good reader? Why do we want to be a fluent reader? It's because then I can make the connections that I need to make. Then I can actually apply this, and I can do things like recognize pattern, plan strategy, and feel. It's such a interesting idea. Like, I just think it's such a cool idea that I had never thought about when I thought about, why do I want to become a good reader? Oh, so I have that time to make connections. I have that time to plan. I have that time to feel. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's explained on that timeline of reading with the different milliseconds. And she's got a visual in the book of the different areas of the brain that light up at different points along that timeline. But ultimately, how that gets expressed, I think she has a single sentence which beautifully encapsulates this. We bring our life experiences to the text, and the text changes our experience of life. So what you read changes who you are, and who you are influences what you read, which is why I think everybody should choose books like this to wrestle with, even if it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I can say that because I've had to do the same thing myself with how to read a book.
Yeah.
I hated that book when we read it. I was like, why in the world are we reading this? We've read 41 books already. We know how to read.
Yep.
It was the driest, most boring book I've ever read. It's probably also one of the most influential.
Yeah.
But it wasn't till months and years after I read that I realized what it did to me. And I was like, oh, wait, I think I've heard about this before. Oh, yeah, those 4 levels of reading. I see how that's getting played out in my life now.
Yeah, so she ties back into something else, Mike, that I want to have a direct confrontation with you about. So,
okay.
Are you ready for this? I mean, just gear up. I'm giving you the ability.
I have no idea, but sure.
All right. She talks about Middle Earth, Narnia, Hogwarts, and developing metaphor, inference, analogy, right? All of these things. Mike, you don't like to read fiction. You are an anti-fiction person, just like I am an anti-physical book person. Right. And while we can exist on this earth in harmony, we should have this conversation. Why don't you read fiction books?
That's a great question. And I think at this point, actually, I'm not anti-fiction.
Okay.
It's just the fiction books are never the ones that I'm excited to pick up and read.
Yeah.
I have several fiction books that I want to read. Toby, Joshua, Rachel, they all love fiction books, and I see them reading them, and they talk about how great the stories are, and I pick them up, and I'm like, I'm going to read this one, and then I start reading it, and it just isn't doing it for me. And the argument, you can make the argument that I should be reading those fiction books because of the empathy that it's going to develop in me. I even made the argument earlier about how it helps kids understand, things from other people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to give me an action item for that, you can. I will probably fail at it, but I am willing to try again.
I can't, I don't think it's fair to give you an action item to read a fiction book. I think though.
No. I think it is. Do it. Mike, read a fiction book. It's going in the outline.
My big thing is like, don't read a whole fiction book. Read a fiction short story. Like find
Sure.
one. Like, have you ever, do you know, did you ever hear of a book called The Veldt?
Mm-mm.
All right, I'll send it to you. I'll send it. It's a book from a long time ago. It actually is very timely today, and you'll understand why when we do it. But it's a short story, and it's a really interesting take on the world at the time, and then it's very applicable to right now. But I just think there's a both and here, right? Like, and what I struggle with is she talks about metaphor, inference, and analogy. And what it made me do is it made me go, do I read fiction books to actually think about metaphor, inference, and analogy, or do I just read them to be entertained? Like, do I just want to go into another world and like kind of escape what we're doing? And I think most of the time that's what I do. And this is where I've always, for lack of a better way to put it, like poo-pooed, literary analysis and like these lit classes where it's like, we're going to take this person's work and we're going to study the in-depth meaning of this work. And I've been like, why? Like, let's just have fun. Like, let's just entertain this. But I think there's something there. And I think it happens more than we realize is you're reading this fiction book and you're really comparing, oh, well, how does that relate to my life? Or, oh, how does that relate to the way somebody else handled this in a different context or in a different book? And how did he develop this world versus this world? And I think so one of the books that really kind of just wrecked my world in terms of doing this is, have you read Ready Player One?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So Ready Player One, you'd get a kick out of it because you're a child of the 80s like I am. So you'd get a kick out of Ready Player One. I think it'd be one for you. Don't watch the movie first. Read the book first. I promise you. But you really kind of place yourself in the world. At least I did. And you're like, what would it be like to be in this world? Like, what would it be like to be in this world and kind of go from there? So the short story would be The Veldt. The long story would be Ready Player One. It's nerdy enough that I think you'd like it. And I'll get off my fiction soapbox now.
Okay. So you'll have to send me the links for those so I can
will
put them in the show notes.
I will, for sure.
But Ready Player One, that one I have. And you know what, Corey? I'm going to buy this right now. It will be here Sunday, December 21st. As we record this, that will be before the episode comes out. But here's my Christmas fiction book.
And if you hate it, blame it on the audience, not me.
Not sure that's how that works, but okay.
Okay.
All right. Ready to move on to the next one?
I am.
Okay, so let's talk about dyslexia. Actually, it's not just dyslexia. Part 3 is when the brain can't learn to read.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 7 is dyslexia's puzzle and the brain's design. So this one does talk a bit about dyslexia, and I find it fascinating how she talks about this. Mentions that dyslexia is not a reading disorder since the brain was never intended to read.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting point. Never
Agreed.
thought about it that way before. And there's lots of potential sources of dyslexia. So some of the ones she mentions here are a flaw in the older structures of the brain, a failure to achieve automaticity. So that's basically the efficiency on the timeline that she talked about in the last chapter, an impediment in the circuit connections among the structures, a completely different circuit being formed for reading, or the hard one, multiple structures, multiple deficits, and multiple subtypes.
Yeah.
So basically, you're never going to find a single cause for this, but kind of here's, what happens. I liked the definition of disconnection syndrome, which is when the different parts of the brain necessary for a given function are cut off from one another, causing the function to break down. So this is really at the heart of what she's talking about. Mentioned earlier, you've got the visual, you've got the auditory, all these different parts coming together when you learn to read. So if one of those isn't functioning correctly, it can cause the whole system to not work. And that's basically what happens with dyslexia. And brain scans of children with dyslexia show that the brain actually creates a completely different reading circuit. And she's got lots of examples of those potential circuits that could be created based on the different deficiencies inside the book, which is really interesting. I think the larger point she alludes to here, which is kind of fascinating, is that readers with dyslexia use far more right brain structures. So the larger point she kind of drives at in the next chapter specifically is the right side of the brain is the one that is more creative. So dyslexia in a way can just kind of push you in a different direction, and you develop strengths in other areas, which is really cool. And I love one other phrase here, learning to read. So this is kind of like what could go wrong, right? This specific sentence is awesome. Learning to read, like Red Sox baseball, is a wonderful thing that can go wrong for any number of reasons. And that's a great taste of her writing style.
Yep. So Mike, help me remember. Right brain is creative. Left brain is analytical. Am I thinking about that right? Okay. I was trying to remember that. I think one of the important parts is when you get into part 3 of this book is she has a kid with dyslexia. And it's part of her family as well. Like, and she describes how dyslexia has, been part of her great grandfather, and then it kind of moved down through her thing. So she's passionate about this. The other one is like, you can very much see how she's trying to apply this in her academic work now. So she's done all this work on writing. She's done all this work on reading. She's done all of this work on alphabets and all that stuff. And now you can see where she's moved into. She's moved into this idea of like, let's apply this to understanding dyslexia and understanding and trying to help people who struggle with dyslexia to overcome this. And she's, I love authenticity. I love the fact that people are intellectually honest about certain things. She talks about it at one point in time that only time and more evidence will tell the truth, right? Like, so she's not trying to come out with this book and say, we figured it out. Here you go. Done. Which if you can do that, that's great. But she's just saying, we understand this is a problem, and here are the connections we're trying to make, and we're trying to understand this. And this is what we know so far, and time's going to tell the truth. I actually think this stuff, while it really has no direct impact on my life, kind of thing. I mean, I may have students who struggle with dyslexia. That's probably the closest connection that I have to this. This is like the most interesting section of the book to me. Is like, this is just cool to think about, like, oh, because of all this stuff I told you before, there can be challenges with this. And look what it does. Like, it impacts in this way, and like it challenges in this way. And then here are all the like latent effects on this. And I think the reason why I like this so much is because it makes me think in systems. It's like there's all of these systems, delayed effects and not delayed effects, and all of that stuff that comes through here. So she talks about it in one situation. There's a gap in time, or an asynchrony, between their visual and auditory processes, and how that like plays out in their information processing, and how it plays out into the implications. I just think she does a really good job talking about dyslexia. And then she goes into a section there, and that's where you got the Red Sox baseball quote. If I had 5 minutes to talk to parents, teachers and parents everywhere, and then and then she just unpacks, she just like unloads. And I was like, man, we found her thing. Like, we found her thing that she's super passionate about. It's just a really good section on kind of the background of dyslexia.
Yeah, well, that actually leads into the next chapter. So let's go there and continue this conversation. Chapter 8 is genes, gifts, and dyslexia. And one of the reasons that I think this is personal is not just that she has a child with dyslexia, but also she identifies some of these traits in herself, even though she doesn't have dyslexia. So she mentions in chapter 8, the left hemisphere tends to be more precise and time efficient, which makes reading easier, but creativity harder. Okay. And that time efficiency, if you don't have that, She talks about how it influenced her ability to maintain a tempo in music. Okay, so I'm obviously left-brained at this point, because one of the things that drives me crazy is when people just cannot keep a beat. And I'm not a drummer, that's not how I'm wired. But I know people who, if they play guitar and sing by themselves, they sound amazing. But when you try to sit down and jam with them, they cannot lock in. And it's like, dude, I don't even know where to go with you.
Yep.
And I never made the connection that was heightened right brain, decreased left brain sort of a thing. But I think that the things that contribute to dyslexia, like you can kind of see, the letters are scrambled or not, that's oversimplifying it. It's not that simple, but you can clarify, I think, with enough testing if somebody has dyslexia. But at what point do you cross that threshold? And it's not just dyslexia that this shows up in. This influences everything in your entire world. So I think it's really important to understand yourself, to understand the way that you're wired, and then what do you do with that?
Yep.
You don't try to minimize your weaknesses. Because that's one of the I think natural reactions is, well, this is a weakness, I'm just going to work on this until it's not a weakness anymore. And then you just become kind of average at everything. I think the better approach is to recognize where your strengths are, figure out how you can leverage those. Doesn't mean you don't work on your weaknesses at all, but what are you optimizing for here? And some of the most successful people in history have had dyslexia. Thomas Edison, Leonardo da Vinci, Albert Einstein, she said, were all considered to have had dyslexia. And I never heard that before. There were lots of other examples, and there was one story specifically she mentioned about the race car driver. I forget the person's name.
Steve.
But
I can't remember it either.
The point was they had a hard time learning to read, but they were very successful in other ways because they learned to lean into the things that actually worked for them. And I feel like that is a great strategy for absolutely everybody. She doesn't frame it as that, but that's how I read this section. And I'm like, oh, this is totally applicable to everybody everywhere. It's not just, what do you do with if you know somebody with dyslexia? I feel like this is it's not cleanly generalizable because of the way that it's packaged, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that we can apply to our own lives from this.
Yeah, and this is consistent with, you think about somebody who's blind or deaf or something like that, where a lot of times that their inability to see gives them a heightened sense of hearing, or like those kind of things. It's a very similar idea to me is, oh, my brain doesn't make connections in terms of reading and writing, like yours might, or like understanding that alphabet or whatever it might be. But I can account for that in other ways, and it's allowed me to develop these things in this other way. And I think it's just really, really cool to see how this applies, or that same idea applies in the brain of a reader who doesn't read like everybody else does, or makes connections differently, or whatever. I think that's a really neat point. I'm ready to go to 9.
All right. The last chapter of the book, which is titled Conclusions. It's not a true conclusion, but really it's the subtitle here, From the Reading Brain to What Comes Next.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure how to summarize this chapter, but this is where she starts to get into some of the digital stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple things in here that she mentioned which got me thinking, but this book was written so long ago that it doesn't cleanly map to where we are right now. She mentions that as technology advances, our capacity, for good or bad, will be exponentially increased. I mean, can totally understand and see that playing out. And she asks the question, will the next generation's capacity to find insights be altered? And I think absolutely it will be. The technology that we use, not just what we read, but how we read it influences who we are. And then it's gone beyond just reading now. It's, the video and the audio and the TikToks that you were mentioning earlier, and garbage in, garbage out. which I think, this is where you start to see the genesis of the ideas she's turning around in her head and leading into Reader Come Home, the next book that she read, which is really, really good. I liked how she talks about reading as an example, how the brain can go beyond itself, the neuroplasticity, who knows what we're actually capable of. New thoughts come more readily to a brain that has already learned how to rearrange itself. And that I think I've seen evidence of in my own life too. The more books I read, even if it's not related to the content that I read, the more ideas I'm able to have, the better those ideas tend to be. Online literacy challenges the traditional roles of author and reader. And the point she's kind of making there is when everybody can just throw up a blog post, the barrier to entry is pretty low. I actually don't think this is all bad, but I get the point that she's talking about here. I would not be a writer if I had to go through a traditional publishing route. I would not be a video producer if I did not have YouTube. I would not be a podcaster if tools like Transistor did not exist.
Yep.
And I think that's actually a good thing, that people can unleash their creativity in those different ways.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff in here. I guess the other thing here, the internet may cause people to not think for themselves. Yes, absolutely. The digital world makes us used to getting information immediately. Absolutely, we're not patient anymore. And there's a quote here I like. I fear that many of our children are in danger of becoming just what Socrates warned us against, a society of decoders of information whose false sense of knowing distracts them from a deeper development of their intellectual potential. I kind of feel like at this point, what do you do with that? You worry about yourself, not everybody else. Okay. Do the best you can with what you've got. And then humans today don't need to be binary thinkers. If two choices appear before you, there's usually a third. I love that idea. I hate the whole binary model. This is my issue with goals. You either achieve it or you don't. If you can get beyond, there's just these two options. I feel like there's a whole nother world of possibilities there.
Yeah, I'm going to start with your decoders of information and not critical thinkers. And I worry that they're not even worried about being decoders of information anymore. They're not even trying to get to that far where they try to understand. And this is where I think media literacy matters so much. So you have that idea. She calls out in a series of questions earlier. Will unguided information lead to an illusion of knowledge and curtail us from the more difficult, time-consuming, critical thought processes that lead to knowledge itself? And I think this is something we're seeing with AI, right? This is something we're seeing with all these models. We're letting it try to do the difficult, time-consuming process to connect the dots and make these different connections. And we're not doing that. And I think that's a worry. Now, I am pro AI when it comes to certain things. So I'll give you an example of this. Mike and I are talking about regex. I don't think you going to AI and saying, hey, here's what I want to do in regex. Help me with the syntax of this. I don't think you're doing yourself a major disservice there, right? I really just don't think you're doing it, because what are you going to do otherwise? You're going to go to a forum, you're going to look up the regex syntax, and you're going to figure it out from there, or you're going to go read a manual, and because really what you're looking for is the syntax. And if you do that and you keep doing that and you keep doing it, whether it's AI, whether it's the manual, whether it's a forum, whatever it is, you're going to learn how you need to write the regex. It's a very formulaic process. That's very different than me reading your blog posts and Maryanne Wolf's blog posts and reading somebody else's blog posts and somebody else's blog posts and then making ideas that thread through that and connect through that. That's a very different thing. When you combine this with the idea that there's a worry, and I can't remember if you and I have talked about this before or not, so if we have, I'm sorry. There's an idea that as these AI tools continue to condense information, they're condensing wrong information, and then they're essentially going to make themselves dumber. That we're not training them hey, what you just spit back there is wrong. The next AI model is then built on the wrong model, and we continue to perpetuate this idea these wrong ideas, or just this stuff that's factually incorrect. And there's a chance that these AI models actually don't give us the right thing a generation or 2 generations or 3 generations from now, and they continue to lose trust because they're not giving us the information. And I think this is something that humans can easily identify, especially if you're an expert in the field or you're knowledgeable about the field, you'll be like, whoa, that's just way wrong. Mike doesn't make a show about baking sourdough bread. He just doesn't do that. And I know that because I follow Mike, right? And he would talk about sourdough bread all the time if he made a show about that. Whereas it gets this wrong information and then perpetuates it down. And I think so. I think even though this book was kind of pre the AI, transition and all that, all of those things, I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's really applicable to right now, and that we can think about these things right now in terms of how they impact us. I like then that she gets into the idea of how do we use this and how do we apply this, right? In the transmission of knowledge, the children and the teachers of the future should not be faced with that choice between the two. Like you said, it's not this binary. It's we live in this world. How do we make the most of this world? This is what we live in. We don't get to control that. We got to make the most of it. We got to do what's right for this. So, for instance, we shouldn't should we listen to everything with smart speed? This is what we talked about in the pro show, right? Should we listen to everything with smart speed and with silence removed, or should I do everything through a filter of somebody else that's filtering it for me? Or should I actually go and really wrestle with the information and really dig into that thing? And I think that the answer is some stuff. Do the smart speed, do the skip silence, do the summarized version of that. Other stuff, don't. You need to dig into that, and you have to make that choice. And are we teaching people to make that choice? And so I think she ends the book really, really well in terms of wrapping it up and tying back into other things. And then she doubles down, triples down, quadruples down. I don't know what it is. This gift of time to think beyond just the text on the page and actually to make those connections and develop those thoughts. I mean, I think she does a really good job, wrapping it up.
Yeah, she asked the question in this chapter, how will technology change our neural pathways in the future? So I think the important thing to recognize is that it is changing our neural pathways. Mm-hmm. And then deciding for yourself, is this important or not? If it is important, then don't shortcut. Put in the effort and force yourself to make sense of it. Don't just ask AI for the summary and make all these connections for me. And so with the regex thing, if I really wanted to know regex, I should be reading the forums.
Correct.
I should be figuring it out. I'm not a web developer. I will never need to know regex again, most likely. So just give me the answer, and then I'll move on to what I am actually optimizing for. The thing to be aware of, though, is that just because I created this regex, I don't know regex. Okay, just because I can retrieve an answer does not mean I am a knower of things.
Yep, correct.
So decide for yourself what is actually worth knowing and chase that with curiosity, and don't shortcut that. It's not a problem to be solved and then you just check the box and you move on to the next thing. It's something to be wrestled with as you develop what you actually think about something.
Yep. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well said.
All right. Well, anything else from this book before we go to action items?
Nope. I'm ready to go to action items.
All right. So other than the fiction book that you gave me, reading Ready Player One, I have no action items from this book.
And I think that's appropriate.
Okay, so you don't either.
That doesn't bother me at all. And again, I don't even remember if my action item comes from this book or something else that I saw, but I agree. I don't have many or any action items from this. So, and I'm okay with that.
All right. Well, let's go to style and rating then. And I think the style of this book is amazing. I can totally understand why, if neuroscience isn't your thing, you probably aren't interested in this topic. If you are even vaguely interested in neuroscience and how it relates to the ability to read, I don't think you could pick a better package.
Yep. So
Maryanne Wolf is a phenomenal writer. You mentioned the Bandersnatch previously, and the tying together of the worlds. So you mentioned, let's see, Lord of the Rings, Narnia, and Harry Potter, right?
Yep.
And so she'll use those three things in a list, and then the next sentence she'll write a sentence in a way to prove her point, where she'll reference main characters from each of those three stories. And the way that she does it, it doesn't add a whole bunch of length to the book. It doesn't feel like just get to the point already. It's brilliantly woven together.
Yep.
It's a nonfiction book that almost reads like a fiction narrative. It's interesting to read if you're interested at all in the topic and the story that she is telling. And she says right at the beginning what it's about. So I don't blame people who are like, nah, this isn't for me. That's the difference, I think. There is like she's not holding the powder until the end.
I agree.
Like, this is what this is about, and now I'm going to tell you why I think this. So if you're interested in it at all, I think it's a really, really good book. There is so much science in this book. If you look at the back and all of the references, I mean, she has put in the work. She has a whole bunch of colleagues. She's worked at places where they have whole programs devoted to this stuff. She is the world's expert in this. If you had to pick one person, she's the source. And unlike a lot of other people that I have read, they are the source for this particular thing. And well, I guess I better read what they wrote about it. Very dry, very boring. That's not Maryanne Wolf at all. There's a lot of personality that comes through in the way that she writes. And honestly, like, I can't think of a better author at like weaving together these historical narratives with modern research with personal stories. I think it's interesting that we go through this book and there are 0 action items associated with it. But like I said, I do view this as a bookend to How to Read a Book.
Yeah.
The How to Read a Book is the how, Proust and the Squid is the why. And if you don't care about the why, you're going to want to skip this one. If you are at all interested in the why, this book is amazing. The Story and Science of the Reading Brain, it's exactly what it says on the tin. I am going to give this book 5 stars. I was hesitating. I was kind of going back as I was reading it between 4 and 5. But having to wrestle with the fact that, I think anyways, you didn't really like this. It kind of clarified for me what this book was intended to do. And I recognize that it's not going to be for everybody. So it's sort of like a 5 with an asterisk.
I get that.
But I really enjoy this book. I really like Maryanne Wolf. It's sort of the best version of what I expected from this. I guess I feel a little bad because I didn't even consider the fact that maybe you wouldn't like this one.
No, I'm better for having read it. So don't do that at all. Yeah, don't do that at all. I'm better for having read it.
Okay, good. So if you're interested at all, especially in like the neuroscience behind reading and how this impacts how you read, what you read, I don't think it's very tactical, but it's really interesting, and I would recommend for that type of person you pick this one up. If the topic doesn't resonate with you, if you listen to this episode, you got to this point and you're like, yeah, I know everything that I care to know about reading in the brain, then skip this one. But if this is a topic of interest, this is a great book.
Yep. All right. So I am so torn on this. Okay. So I'm going to address a couple of things that you said, and then I have to try to work my way into a rating because as of me talking right now, I don't know what I'm going to rate this book. So Bookworm, our tagline for the show, Bookworm is dedicated to doing more than reading just reading books. Mike and Cory read a book every 2 weeks and discuss the ways the author's lessons apply to the rest. Okay. We don't say that we read books that we like. We just say we read a book and we apply it to our lives, right? So I think about this and I say, okay, I read a book and I apply it to my life. Having talked to you about this is an interesting book. It's an incredibly well-written book. I could not agree with you more that like there is no qualm about the fact that she is a great writer. There is no qualm about the fact that she is an expert in her field. I've already said earlier that she takes complex academic topics that I'm sure she's written tens of hundreds of however many papers on these complex academic topics in her research group. And she's had grad students write them on. And she takes it and she makes it packageable to everyday people, non-academics, people that are just interested in neuroscience and reading and all of these things, dyslexia and all this stuff. She does a fantastic job. Absolutely fantastic job. There's no way I'd read this book again. Absolutely zero way. Like you would have to pay me a decent amount of money for me to read this book again. And it's just because I don't care. I'm not that interested in most of what she wrote. That's not a slight on her. That's not even a slight on the book. That is a thing that is acknowledging the disconnection between my interest in this topic and what she wrote about. It's nobody's fault. That's totally fine. I have nothing negative to say about what she did. And you've heard me in the past. I will say negative things. I have no problem saying something negative, like I didn't like this section. I didn't like the way the author did this. I didn't like the structure. I didn't like whatever it is. I have none of that. It was just a pure disconnect between what I'm interested in and what she wrote about. Now, one of the things you'll acknowledge, having listened to the episode, is like, I still got stuff out of this book. Like, I still got a decent amount out of this book. And then what's important here too is I got a lot out of the conversation that Mike and I could have around this book, and like trying to make connections here and trying to do, the application to life and those kind of things. So that was important for me as well. So do I walk away from this book being like, this was a gigantic waste of my time and I wish I wouldn't have done it? No. Would I read the book again? No, absolutely not. Right? I have no interest in reading the book again. Did I make my idea integration board or my book on a page for this? No. Am I going to make an idea integration board or book on a page for this? Absolutely not. Like, I'm just not going to do it because I don't see what's in this book connecting to the knowledge management or the knowledge graph that I want to build in my life. I think there will be a summary page for this that says, this is what this book talks about. It was cool. Read it for bookworm, kind of a thing, right? But I'm not going to take the time that I would do for other books, or that I'm going to do for other books. So this is where I get into a problem. Like, I don't feel that it's fair to give this book a low rating because it was a disconnect with what I'm interested in. I really don't. But if you listen to this episode and then you see that I rate this book like a 4.5, you're going to be like, wait, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So I actually started thinking about, should we change the rating system of the show? And I was like, Cory, you can't do that. We're on episode 239. Like, you can't change the rating system. But I was like, there needs to be a rating system that says raw rating based on Cory, and then rating for the intended audience. Because I think if you rate this for the intended audience, it's easily a 5-star book. Like, for the intended audience who cares about neuroscience, who cares about reading, who cares about dyslexia, like, this is without a doubt clearly a 5-star book. Hands down, 100% 5-star book. But then what do I rate it, Mike? Like, and this is an actual question. This is not me like buying time before I give it a number. Mike, what should I rate this book? Because
okay, so let's clarify the rating. I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I just moved everything over to Transistor and I was thinking through, like, we've stuck to the numbers in the past. But I think the best version of these ratings is, if you were to go on Amazon and leave a review, how many stars would you give it? So I actually think in Transistor we should force ourselves to choose 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars, and I'll just put the number of star emoji under the Mike's rating. So this is purely Cory's rating. Okay. So we can, all of the audio, the hour and a half of talking, that's the justification for who it's for. Now go ahead and stamp it with whatever you think this book is in your personal tier list.
My problem is I would never do that. Like, I would never stamp it with just 5 stars. I would stamp it with 5 stars, and then the asterisk is for the intended audience. Like, I would have to do it that way. Because if you didn't let me do it that way, I can't stamp it 5 stars. Because then if you ask me about the book, I'm not going to say it's a 5-star book for me personally. So I don't know what to do. I mean, my gut would say, out of respect for what she's done and her, and like, it's a 5-star book. Like, I don't want anybody.
It's Cory's rating, and we know that you don't like this, so it can't be a 5-star.
Yeah, but like, it's just me. Like, it's not you, it's me, right? Like, this is purely one of those it's not you, it's me thing, to where, like, for me to rate this, like, I mean, it's definitely higher than a 3. I mean, I got to go 4. And like, the only reason it's getting the 1-star knock is because it didn't resonate with me and what I care about. So I'm going to go 4. I don't feel good about it. I'd feel much better about a 5 with an asterisk. And we took way too long for me to tell my rating. So 4.
No, I think it's totally fine to say this is a great book for certain types of people, and it's not for me, and to rate it lower. In fact, I will probably do that at some point in the near future.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That took too
long. All right. No, that's fine. Okay, so let's put Proust and the Squid on the shelf. What is next, Cory?
All right. So the next book, I don't know a ton about this book. I looked at it online and thought it sounded cool. I read the description. I looked up the people and said, okay, let's give it a shot. It's called Hacking the Human Mind, the Behavioral Science Secrets Behind 17 of the World's Best Brands. I'm just intrigued with, branding and how those things lead to, I don't know, like how they mess with other people's minds and what we can apply to the things that we're doing in life, Mike, and just how we can take good ideas and keep making them good. So this book is by Richard Shotton and then Michael Aaron Flicker. So it's called Hacking the Human Mind. If you're reading along with us, pick that one up. That's going to be our next episode. Mike, what's after that?
So I have a question about that name, by the way, because Michael Aaron Flicker on the Amazon page, Michael Aaron is all one word, but the first A in Aaron is capitalized like it's a second name. Is that correct?
So on the actual cover of the book, Michael Aaron is the name, and it doesn't do, but they use like an all caps font. So yes, it's Michael Aaron.
Right. So in the Amazon listing, okay, yeah. So it's all one word. It's kind of weird that it's capitalized in the middle, kind of camel case.
In the bio, it's all one word again with the capital A. So yeah, I mean that's just the nature of it.
Interesting. Okay, so after that, we're gonna read my Gap book from last time, and that is Intentional by Chris Bailey. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, Cory, because I've read this book and I like this book, and there will be other podcasts coming out before this one probably where I talk about this book.
Okay.
There is no pressure for you to rate this highly simply because I might.
Okay.
I'm picking this one because it's timely. It's about to be released as we record this. It will be released by the time this episode, I believe, goes live or right before. Yeah. I can't remember. Math is hard. It's coming out at the beginning of January. And I want to start to try to pick more timely books that way. I feel like if people are going to listen to Bookworm because they need a filter for like which books are actually worth reading, then it makes sense to do that kind of thing. And yeah, I guess spoiler alert, I've read this and I like it, and I think it's going to be a really cool conversation. So
does this connect with the course he just put out?
Oh, you mean the course that I helped him create?
Yes,
it does.
It does. Okay, I assumed so, but I didn't want to over assume, but I assumed it connected.
So the course talks about some of the models and things that he talks about in this book. It's not just a different version of the book. The course includes an assessment and then like a whole bunch of tactics for actually applying the concepts that he'll talk about in the book. But it's a book about goal setting that I don't hate.
Okay.
That's my one sentence summary.
There you go. I mean, you should put that on the Amazon page.
No, he's got like Charles Duhigg and many more fancy lads.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the mind map guy, right? Like that's what he.
Right. Okay, you got any Gap books?
No, absolutely not. No, I'm not doing.
What about Bandersnatch? I thought you were going to read that.
I said I'm going to read it. I didn't say I was going to read it as a Gap book between now and then. So no Gap books. Intentional.
Well, my Gap book is going to be Ready Player One, which is on its way.
There you go. I might read that with you just because it's fun and I want to read it again.
Okay. I know nothing about this. I just know it was a big deal back in the day, and everybody talked about it, but I never read it.
I hope you're going to like it.
I think I will. All right. Well, thanks for listening. If you want to recommend a book, by the way, you can do that much more easily now by going to bookworm.fm/recommend. It'll take you to the form. You can put in the book, the author, the link if you've got it, so it's easier for us to find. But we'd love to get some recommendations. If you want to support the show, that would be amazing. We have a pro show which has an extended ad-free episode in a private feed. So today, the pro show, we talked about my switch to the Apple Podcast app and how I surprisingly enjoyed it. There's also a bootleg feed, which gets released right after we record this. So usually that's about 2 weeks before the episode goes live. So if you want it hot off the press, join the membership, and you'll get access to the pro feed and the bootleg feed. You'll also get access to a bookworm wallpaper and the video replay of the reading masterclass that I did, 2.5 hour workshop on how to read better. And all of that is $7 a month. You can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm or just bookwormfm/pro. And if you would love to support the show, that is a great way to do it. Thank you to all the pro members who are willing to throw some money our way to help us keep this show going.
If you're reading along with us, pick up Hacking the Human Mind, and we look forward to talking to you soon.